For this Brown Park presentation, we're going to go over the ladies of Browns Park. There are a lot of wonderful ladies pioneer ladies that lived in Browns Park. I'm not going to be able to get them all, but I'm trying to get some of their stories in this presentation. Hi, my name's Charlie Wardle. I'm the author of two books, uh, Browns Park Haunted History and John Jarvie. Also, I studied Browns Park history for a long time and actually lived there for a period of time too. Many wonderful women that lived in Browns Park. You had to be a special type of woman to thrive in Browns Park with its remoteness. Through this presentation, you'll learn of the lives of a few of the women who were instrumental in bringing life to Browns Park. There's a picture of Esther Campbell with some of her students in Browns Park. First white lady in Browns Park was known as Snappy Annie. Warren D. Parson was born February 6, 1851 in Quincy, Illinois. He was the son of Dr. John Parson. Warren married Annie Sophie Onquist, 1872, in Colorado. They moved to Rock County, Colorado, which is part of Browns Park. It's in the Colorado side of Browns Park. Today, it's called Moffett County. They had four children. Warren Jr., 1874, was the first white baby boy born in Browns Park. John, 1878, Alice, 1880, and George, 1883. Annie's nickname was Snappy Annie. She was the first white lady to reside in the park. I guess she would get upset and either yell or snap at people to earn that nickname. Her first baby, Warren Jr., died in 1880 and is buried somewhere in Browns Park. First white baby girl in Browns Park was Ann Bassett. Annie Matie Bassett was born May 12, 1878, in Browns Park to Elizabeth and Herb Bassett. Wasn't able to nurse Ann, so an Indian woman nursed Ann. Her name was Sika Pika, baby Ann, until the family purchased a milk cow. After Ann's birth, the Meeker massacre occurred at the Indian Agency in Meeker, Colorado. Some of the residents of Browns Park left the area until it was safe to return. The Bassett family went to Rock Springs, Wyoming, and returned to Browns Park in 1880. First wedding in Browns Park. On August 11th, 1879, Helena Parson married Lewis Allen at Doc Parsons' home. This is the first recorded wedding in Browns Park. Helen and Lewis had 10 kids. Helen and Lewis lived at Doc Parsons' ranch for about 5 years after Doc Parson had passed away. First baby girl's death. Susan Leanne Allen, Doc Parsons' granddaughter. Doc Parson died July 12, 1881. In John Jarvie's journal, he talks about helping bury Doc Parson. Susan Leanne Allen was born September 16, 1881. Susan lived just short of a year and died July 23, 1882. Susan lay to rest next to her grandfather, Doc Parson. The grave marker at the Parson Ranch has Doc Parson on one side and Susan on the other side. The grave marker is located about 50 yards east of the spring at the Doc Parson Ranch. First woman's death in Browns Park, Sadie Barr. Sadie Barr was born December 25th, 1865, in Scotland. Sadie was the younger sister to Nellie Barr. Jarvie. In August of 1887, Nellie gave birth to James Jarvie, their youngest son. Sadie came to the Jarvie Ranch in Browns Park to help Nellie. Sadie became sick with Bright disease is kidney sickness. Nellie's mother, Margaret, was on her way to Browns Park when Sadie died. Sadie died at the Jarvie house on September 25th, 1887. Sadie was taken to Ogden, Utah, where she was laid to rest. Now, there's a picture of her headstone in the Ogden, Utah cemetery. Also, a couple newspaper articles talking about Sadie's death from Ogden Herald, September 25th, 1887. Then a thank you card sent out by Sadie's older sister and her husband, Mr. and Mrs. Erngel, and John Jarvie. Also, that it also makes me wonder if Nellie was able to attend her sister's funeral in Ogden, where she's not mentioned in the thank you card. Sadie Barr was an opera singer at the Union Opera House in Ogden, Utah. Now, I have a few pictures of Sadie here. First one is Sadie standing next to her mother, Margaret. This picture was taken in Pennsylvania. Then I got a picture of part of a cast of an opera um, taken in Ogden, Utah. Sadie, I believe, is on the bottom row on the left. Then three newspaper articles of different plays Sadie was in. Miss Chester and The Game to the Last and The Willow Corpse. Nellie Jarvie's death. On May 9th, 1890, Browns parked to see the terrible news that John Jarvie's wife, pretty little Nell, had passed away. Nellie died from hemorrhage bleeding from the lungs. Nellie was 32 years old. She left behind her husband John, who's 46, and four sons. John Jr. was 9, Thomas was 7, Archibald was 4, and James was 2. Nellie was buried in Ogden, Utah, in the same cemetery and next to her sister Sadie. Now, the display and video at the Jarvie Ranch states that she died in 1895, but no, she actually died in 1890. And John Jarvie, in his journal, mentions that Nellie died on May 5th, not May 9th of 1890. Okay, here's a couple newspaper articles on Nellie's death. First one is Ogden's Daily Standard, May 13th, 1890. Talks about, Nellie dying in Browns Park and from hemorrhaging of the lungs. And also states that she was a member of the LDS Church. The other article is on the same day as the first one for Salt Lake Herald Republican, May 13th, 1890. It talks about Mr. Spargo receiving a telegram talking about Nellie's death. Now, his wife had just given birth to a child, and so he did not tell his wife about her sister dying. But, talks about the remains and says that the service was done by the Episcopal Church, which Nellie was a member of that church. I have here a couple pictures possibly of Nellie. First one at the upper left-hand corner is Nellie and her sister Margaret sitting next to her grandmother Ellen Gray. Then that picture was taken in Scotland, and another picture taken in Scotland of a little girl that possibly could be Nellie. And I have a picture here of taken in Pennsylvania of a lady sitting that looks a lot like Nellie. Then another picture of two ladies here. Believe that is Nellie and her sister Margaret. Then I have a picture here of Nellie also taken in Pennsylvania. Now the little part of the necklace she is wearing, I actually found that in the summer of 2025 just by the dugout of the Jarvie Ranch. The one I found that looks a lot like the one she had, but the stone is actually missing in the one I found. Nellie's trunk. Nellie took a trip to India. We just don't know when she took that trip. It could have been before the wedding. According to John Jarvis' journal, he came to Browns Park after the wedding about 3 months before Nellie, and it could have been right after they were married. John Jarvis sent her on a trip to India. The family still has the trunk in their possession that she got in India. There are a few pictures of the trunk, a picture of the inside of the trunk, then a picture of me standing next to Carol Jarvis Gardner, the great granddaughter of John Jarvis and Nellie Jarvis. Mary Ashton Greenwood Myers, Pistol Pitts, divorce, and marry. Mary Ashton was born in Wakefield, England in 1853. I call Mary Ashton my great great aunt because my great great grandmother was also named Mary Ashton, born in 1851 in Stockport, England. They could have been related to each other. At the age of 13, Mary Ashton was forced to marry James Greenwood to get her dad, William, out of debtor's prison. Sometime after the wedding, it could have been years or so afterwards, but Mary runs away from the forced marriage and came to America. Mary married Frank Myers in Rock Springs in 1874. They had two sons, Franklin in 1875 and Felix in November of 1876. Now, Frank dies in 1876. He actually died before Felix was born. Mary married Anton Precipice in December of 1876. They had two girls together, Amelia and Natalie. Mary and Anton went through a bitter divorce in September of 1891. Sometime after the divorce, Mary died in 1891 and is buried on her land near Diamond Mountain. Amelia, her daughter, would tell people that her parents died as a result of an Indian attack. Now, that may have been true for Mary, but I know her dad did live quite a bit longer than that. But there's a picture of Mary's grave on Diamond Mountain. There's also another grave next to it that is not marked. I'm not sure whose that is, but it's in the same graveyard fence. Mary Elizabeth Bassett death. Mary Liz Bassett worked with horses and cattle on the Bassett Ranch. Her husband, Amos Herb Bassett, was more of a builder and did the paperwork for the ranch. On December 10th, 1892, Mary had spent the day riding to Zenable Basin and back. She had spent the entire day on a horse. When she rode home, she was sore and her midsection hurt. Two of her children were home. Eb was 14 and George was 8 when Mary went to bed early that night. Around 4 a.m., Mary woke up screaming in pain from her midside. Mary sent Eb out to the bunkhouse to get help. In the bunkhouse was Ice and Dark, Matt Rash, and Jing McKnight. They all they could do to relieve the pain was put warm compressions on Mary's stomach. Shortly after they started the warm compressions, Mary passed away from a rupture of appendix. Now, on the left here is actually a picture of Josie Bassett taken when she was going to school. Then on the right, I believe this is Mary Elizabeth Bassett taken the same time Josie had her picture taken. I think the pictures were taken in Salt Lake City. Bassett Cemetery. Her Bassett little cemetery on the hill overlooking the Bassett Ranch. Mary was the first one to be buried at the Bassett Cemetery. There are 7 people buried there at the Bassett Cemetery. Mary Bassett, who was born in 1857 and died in 1892. Albert Ebb Bassett, born in 1880 and died in 1925. Sally McLeod, Ebb's fiance, born in 1842 and she died in 1926, George Bassett, the youngest of the Bassett family, was born in 1884 and he died in 1951. Then Anne Bassett Willis, Queen Anne, she was born in 1876 and died in 1956. Then Ruby Bassett, that's George's wife, was born in 1873 and died in 1957. And Josie Bassett, the last one to be buried there, was born in 1874 and died in 1962. Now there are a couple Bassett's family that's not there. Sam Bassett, the oldest son, he's actually buried in Washington, and Herb Bassett also died in Quincy, Illinois, and he's buried in Quincy, Illinois. Mary Elizabeth Bassett funeral card. This card was given to me by the museum in Northwest Colorado in downtown Craig, Colorado. The front reads, "Dearest Mother, those has left us, and thy loss is deeply felt. But this God that has berent us, he can all our sorrows heal. Yet again we hope to meet thee when the day of life is filled, when heaven, when in heaven we'll join to greet thee, where no farewell tears are shed." In the back reads, "Weep not that her trials are over. Weep not that her race is run. God grant we may rest as calmly when our work life here is done. Till then, we yield with gladness our mother to him to keep, and rejoice in the sweet assurance he giveth his beloved sleep." Burn accent Martha Rose Goodman. In May of 1895, 3-year-old Martha Rose was helping her older sister with breakfast as her mother was outside the home changing the irrigation water. As they were lighting the fire, Martha Rose's clothes caught on fire. The girls started screaming, catching the attention of Elizabeth with their mother. Elizabeth ran back to the home, grabbed her daughter, and put her in the irrigation dish to put out the fire. Martha's burns were so bad that she died later the same day. Martha Rose is buried in Browns Park by Sterling Springs. A fence was put around Martha's grave. Martha's grave, though, is today on private property. There's a picture of the Goodman family and a newspaper article from Rock Springs talking about the burning death of Frank Goodman's daughter. Rose Warner's broken leg. Rose Warner, wife of outlaw Matt Warner, were living at the Parsons Ranch in Browns Park while Matt was trying to fix up his ranch on Diamond Mountain Range. Now, Rose and Matt were married in Star Valley, Wyoming, where Matt held up one winter hiding from the law. And Matt did serve some time in prison, and they met up again after Matt got out of prison. One day while getting water from the spring house on the Parsons Ranch, Rose fell and broke her leg. Since Matt was gone, Mary Krause took Rose to Fort Duchesne to see a doctor. The doctor discovered cancer in Rose's leg, and the leg was amputated. Matt Warner needed money to pay for Rose's medical bills. He took a job moving a campsite in Dry Fork Canyon. But the real reason he was hired was for his shooting skills. A gunfight took place in Dry Fork Canyon, and Matt ended up killing 2 people. Matt was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Butch Cassidy robbed the Montpelier Bank to pay for Matt Warner's lawyers. There's a picture of Rose Warner and a picture of the spring house where Rose broke her leg.
Here's a few newspaper articles of 1896 about some of the incidents that happened that year. The first one is from Vernal Express. Talks about Mrs. Warner disease in her leg, and the leg needs to be amputated. Then we have one from Provo Daily Inquirer, May 11th, 1896. It talks about the shooting that took place in Dry Fork Canyon, where 2 men were killed, and Matt Warner was involved in the shooting. Then from the Ogden Daily Standard, August 14th, 1896, talks about the bank robbery of Montpelier that happened on August 13th. Accidental poisoning of Kathleen Warren. Kathleen Warren was wife of Jim Warren. Jim was one of the original ranch on Diamond Mountain. He's also the one that taught Matt Warner his wrestling skills. Kathleen and Jim had 7 kids together: Mary, Leah, Annie, James, Julia, Henry, and Edward. They sold the ranch on Diamond Mountain and moved to Browns Park by Beaver Creek. Jim died in 1896 as a result of severe cold. The couple years after Jim's death, Kathleen sold the Beaver Creek Ranch to her son-in-law, Frank, and his wife, Leah Myers. Kathleen was preparing to move to Eagle, Colorado. In June of 1902, Kathleen had a toothache. She took pain medicine. She apparently overdosed. When she went to sleep, she never woke up. Kathleen is buried by her husband on their ranch at Beaver Creek. After Kathleen's death, authorities came looking for the 2 younger Warren boys, Henry and Edward. They were to take them to the orphanage at Denver, Colorado. There's a picture of the grave site on Beaver Creek. That's in the middle of a field. There are no markers, though, at the grave site. A couple newspaper articles about Kathleen's death. The first one was from the Craig Courier, June 14, 1902. It talks about J.M. Leonard, who came from Denver looking for the 2 younger Warner boys and is going to take them back to Denver to the orphanage there. The other one actually talks about Kathleen. She died at the age of 45, and she actually lived in Browns Park for about 25 years. And talks about her death. Mary Law Krause, death. Mary Krause, wife of Charlie Krause, they had 3 kids together: Amelia, Minnie, in 1881, Stanley in 1886, and Clarence in 1888. Mary was the nurse at Browns Park. When someone was ill or hurt, Mary was the one that took care of the Browns Park sick until the doctor came. Mary nursed Speck Williams after her husband sliced his stomach open. Mary also had tried to keep her husband, Charlie Krause, in line. Mary became sick of tuberculosis and died January 31st, 1904. Mary was buried by her house in Bridgeport. In 1911, after Charlie Krause had died, Stanley had his mother's remains removed from Rock Springs to be buried next to his father, Charlie Krause. There's a couple pictures of Mary and Charlie Krause there. They're Mary and Charlie Krause headstone. The baby is Mary and Charlie Krause's granddaughter that was buried there next to them. Also, we have a picture of Mary and Minnie after hunting a bird. I'm not sure what type of bird that is they shot there. And then there's a newspaper article about Mary's death from Rock Springs Miner, February 4th, 1904. Poem John Jarvie wrote for Mary Krause's funeral. It's on display at the John Jarvie Ranch, and also it is read at the end of the John Jarvis video. Here in this world where life and death are equal kings, all should be brave enough to meet what all have met, from the wondrous trees of life, the buds and blossoms fall with ripened fruit, and in a common bed of earth, patriarchs and babes sleep side by side. It may be that death gives us all there is of worth to life. To those who press and strain against our hearts could never die. Perhaps that love would wither from the earth, maybe a common faith thread from out of the past between our hearts and the weeds of selfish. And I should rather live and love where death is king than have eternal life where love is not. Another life is not unless we know and love again the ones who loved us here. The larger and noble faith in all that is and is to be tells us that death, even at its worst, is only perfect rest. We have no fear. We all are children of the same mother, and the same fate awaits us all. We too have our religion, and it is this: help for the living, hope for the dead. Women's gossip leads to a shooting. Miss Carrie Grimes has been spreading rumors about Ann Bassett. One day, Miss Grimes drove her wagon by the Bassett place. Ann and Laith Crew and Miss Williams were at the ranch. Ann confronted Carrie Grimes about the rumors. Miss Grimes pulled out a gun and started shooting. No one was hit, just the piece. Hoy did fine Grimes $60. Now there's a picture here. The picture is actually taken at the Coke Creek Ranch where Josie Bassett was living. The back of the picture says Josie Morris. It was actually Josie Bassett Morris. She's the second one from the left. Laith Crew, which is the second one from the right. Hefty Annie, which is the one on the furthest right, and Ann Benner, which is actually Ann Bassett, Queen Anne. She's the one on the farthest on the left. The back of the picture also says the Four Horsewomen. This picture is from the Prince Atworth collection. Nancy Taylor dies from scarlet fever. After John Jarvis' boys had left home, he started spending time with his new neighbors, the Taylor family, on Taylor's flat. He really liked being around the Taylor's children, reading to them, telling them stories. He took a liking to young Nancy Taylor. In 1908, scarlet fever broke out in Browns Park. It first started with the King family at Bridgeport. Nina Taylor helped take care of the sick King's kids. One day when Nina came home, she noticed young Nancy sitting quietly against the wall behind the stove, trying to get warm. As she examined Nancy, she saw that her teeth were chattering, her eyes were drooping. Nancy said to her mother, "I'm cold, Mom. My head hurts. Oh, my throat stings so bad." Nancy had scarlet fever, and Nancy died a few days later. Nancy was buried in the grove of trees at the old Tulliver's place where the Taylor family was living. John Jarvis and many others were very saddened by Nancy's death. And here's a picture of a bunch of kids in Browns Park. They're actually sitting over the Charlie Cross Canal, which run by John Jarvis' place, and Nancy is actually the second one from the left. Rebecca Brashaw's death. When Rebecca and Louis Bradshaw came to Browns Park, they had 9 children. Elmer, the oldest Bradshaw son, along with his wife, found a homestead across the river from Hoy Bottoms, and Louis found a homestead northwest of John Jarvie Ranch near Red Creek. Louis was the school teacher for Browns Park. Students loved to use Rebecca's pencils because she could make them sharp. She made them from lead bullets by heating them and sanding them into a sharp point. Rebecca became sick with cancer. One day a turkey picked at her hand, causing a sore that wouldn't heal. On January 25, 1909, Rebecca died from cancer. Her arm and side and chest were covered with cancer. The night Rebecca died, her neighbor, Alan Burton, claims that he saw a light come from out of the house and the light went into the river. Rebecca was initially buried near their home along the river. Later, her body was moved to Ladore Cemetery. The marker is still there. She was moved a third time. Her body was moved to Eaton, Colorado after Louis, her husband, died. And there's a picture of her headstone at Ladore Cemetery, and then a picture of a headstone in Eaton, Colorado. Marcy Finn kills Gordon Wilson. Marcy Finn was wife of Michael Finn. They had 4 boys together. The boys were known for their long hair. In 1910, Michael and Gordon Wilson became partners, combining their cattle ranches. On November 17, 1910, Michael and Gordon headed out to drive a herd of cattle up Diamond Mountain. Shortly after leaving, Michael asked Gordon to go back to his cabin to get something. As Gordon approached the cabin, Marcy shot him and killed him. Marcy claims that Gordon was trying to take advantage of her, and she was only trying to protect herself. Because of their partnership, Michael Finn took all Gordon's property and possession. Many people believe that the shooting was set up by Michael. Marcy was arrested and went to trial, but was acquitted for all the charges. Gordon Wilson was buried in Ladore Cemetery. There's a picture of Gordon Wilson's grave, and then there's a picture of Marcy with her 4 boys. You may notice the long hair, especially the one in the back. News of the killing. Woman shoots to kill. Now, this first article comes from the Rocky Mountain News, November 19, 1910. Woman shoots to kill. Reports of the slaying of Bug Wilson reaches Steamboat. Now, Bug was Gordon Wilson's nickname. He talks about Marcy shooting him. And the other article is from the Cheyenne State Leader, November 27, 1910. This article talks about the shooting, also talks about Marcy claiming self-defense, that she was trying to defend herself from Gordon, and she actually got off because of that. Foster leads woman to her boyfriend's body. David Fish and Lola Crude were married April 11, 1921 in Vernal's Second Ward Chapel. They had 1 child, Thelma, born October 13, 1918, before they were married. On May 22, 1924, David Fish and Lona's marriage came to an end as a result of a divorce. Lona and her neighbor in Browns Park, Morris Smith, Morris lived about 4 miles away, started spending a lot of time together. Morris was a World War I vet. At the end of June, Morris went to Lona's house and told her he was going to put up the hay and be gone a few days, but would be back on Friday evening. Friday came and Morris did not show up. On Saturday, Lona went looking for Morris. Lola noticed a flock of vultures, and she decided to walk over to the vultures, and the vultures actually led Lona to Morris's dead body, tangled in a hay rack. Lona went to the Miles place for help. They untangled Morris's body from the rack. One thing they noticed, that Morris's boots were missing and were nowhere to be found in the field. Morris's body was buried close to where they found his dead body. A lot of suspicion started in Browns Park that David Fish had something to do with Morris Smith's death. So later, his body was dug up. An autopsy was performed on Morris's body. The autopsy did not find anything. It was inconclusive that the holes in Morris's body could have been from a gunshot or from the hay rack. He was later reburied in the Vernal Cemetery. There's a newspaper article of the vultures leading Lona to her boyfriend's body as Rocky Mountain News, July 13, 1924. Then the bottom is Morris's headstone in the Vernal Cemetery. Bessie Taylor Garrison dies from scarlet fever. Bessie Taylor married Wilson Garrison on May 4, 1932, just 4 months before her older sister Marie and Bill Allen's marriage. Bessie and Wilson had one son named Melvin, who was born October 17, 1933. In 1936, Bessie became sick with scarlet fever. Bessie and Wilson were planning on moving the cattle to Cold Spring Mountain to stay there for the summer in a cabin. When Bessie was sick, Wilson left her in care of her mother, Nina. Bessie took a turn for the worse. Charlie Taylor, Bessie's dad, rushed to Beaver Creek to use the phone to call the doctor in Rock Springs. Bob Teeter hurried to Cold Spring Mountain to bring Wilson back. When Wilson arrived, the doctor was just coming out of the house and told him that Bessie had passed away. Bessie was taken to Rock Springs to be buried. Bessie's father later had Nancy, would be her older sister, who died earlier from scarlet fever, dig up Nancy's body and take it to Rock Springs to be buried next to her sister. There's a picture of the first telephone in Browns Park. It's on display at the John Jarvie Ranch. And there's a picture of Betsy and Wilson's wedding, and it has Bill Allen and Maria in the background. Young Ann Bassett. Her mother died when Ann was 14 years old. After Elizabeth's death, Ann became kind of a rebellious child. One time when Ann was home from school, she was helping round up stray cattle. She saw and roped the grizzly cub. The grizzly cub's mother charged in to save her cub. The mother bear ended up killing Ann's horse, Milo. Other ranch hands were able to kill the grizzly bear before it got to Ann. Mac, a ranch hand, gave Ann a spanking for catching the grizzly cub. Actually, Ann ended up taking the grizzly cub home to her ranch, and she took care of the cub for a while before they released it back into the wild. Queen Anne. In 1900, Ann Bassett's fiance Matt Rash was killed by Tom Horn, actually. Newspaper referred to Anne as Queen Anne. This is the first recording record of her being called Queen Anne from the newspaper. That's the Rocky Mountain News, August 12th, 1900. She may have been called Queen Anne before that. I used to think that she got the name Queen Anne from in 1911 when she was charged and went to trial for cattle rustling, but she actually had that name as early as 1900. Another Newspaper article from Rocky Mountain News, September 26, 1900, talks about her meeting Matt Rash's dad, and they settled the affairs of Matt Rash's estate. Queen Anne's heart attack and death. Matt Rash, Anne's fiance, was killed by Tom Horn. Horn was hired by Orr Hardy, owner of the Two Bar Ranch, and began a personal war on any cattle branded with the Two Bar Ranch. He would actually kill the cows, shoot them, or drive them over a cliff, or drive them into the Green River. Later, Anne did marry Orr Hardy's foreman, Hal Binnern, and they were married for a few years. Orr Hardy took Anne to court twice in Craig, Colorado. Anne won both cases. In 1953, Anne and her husband, Frank Willis, were vacationing at their new cabin on the Bass Ranch. Anne had a heart attack, and she was life-flighted to the hospital in Craig. After the heart attack, Anne's health was never the same. Anne passed away on May 8, 1956 in Leeds, Utah. Anne's body was cremated. Her ashes would be scattered in Browns Park. Frank couldn't part with Anne's ashes and kept them in the trunk of his car. Frank passed away in 1963. Her ashes were buried then at the Bassett Family Cemetery by her sister, Josie Bassett, after Frank's death. A few newspaper articles about Anne. As the first one is Rocky Mountain News, March 28, 1911, talks about Anne being arrested for cattle rustling. The next one is from the Steamboat Plot, August 20th, 1913. It tells Queen Anne is not guilty, says the jury. And then the last one actually talks about Anne Bassett Willis' death. She is 79 years old. Had a very interesting life. And that's from the Craig Imperial Courier, May 16, 1956. Etta Place. Etta Place was Sundance Kid's girlfriend. Few people think that Anne Bassett was Etta Place. If Anne was Etta Place, there would have to be more than one Etta Place, because Anne could not have been in two places at once. In 1902, Etta, Sundance, and Butch sailed for Argentina. In 1904, Anne and Hal Binnern were married. In 1905, Butch and Sundance sold their ranch in Argentina. In 1907, Etta Place was living in San Francisco, California. And in 1909, a woman matching Etta's description tried to get a death certificate for the Sundance Kid, Harry Longabaugh. And in 1911 and 1913, Anne Bassett went to court in Craig, Colorado for cattle rustling. And in 1923, Anne marries Frank Willis. There's a picture of the Sundance Kid and Etta Place on top. And there's a picture of, on the left is that Anne Bassett, and on the right is Etta Place, and their faces had been compared with each other, and they do have a lot of similarities with each other, but it wasn't proven for sure that they are the same person. Josie Bassett. Josie was Mary Elizabeth and Herb Amos Bassett's oldest child. She was born January 17, 1874 in Rock Point, Arkansas. In 1878, Josie came to Browns Park with her parents and her younger brother Sam. She was 4 years old at the time. Josie knew Butch Cassidy when he came to Browns Park. Josie said that she would not let Butch Cassidy get bored. Josie actually married 5 times. Her first marriage was to James Knight, March 21st, 1893. Charles Rainey in 1902. Charles William in 1906, Emerson Wills in 1909, and Ben Morris in 1913. Josie did have Two sons, Crawford McKnight, born July 12, 1893, and Amos McKnight Chick, born April 14, 1895. Both of them were sons of James McKnight. There's a picture of Josie with her second husband, Charles Rainey. Josie Bassett Morris, broken hip and death. Josie Bassett Morris was the last of the Bassett family. She died in 1964. In 1913, Josie and her husband Ben Morris built the cabin on Cove Creek outside of Jensen, Utah. Josie actually lived in that cabin for just over 50 years. Her marriage to Ben did not last very long. Ben was being abusive to a horse, and Josie told her Ben he had 5 minutes to get out. Ben said he only needed 2 and left. He later came back, said he had 3 more minutes left to get some of his stuff, and Josie chased him off a frying pan. In 1952, Josie was honored as the rodeo queen in Vernal, Utah. In December of 1963, Josie went out to get some firewood and a bucket of water from the spring. Josie was walking by her horse. It nudged her and caused her to fall and break her hip. Josie was able to drag herself back into the cabin. As she made her way into the door, Josie grabbed a dog dish and filled it with snow. She knew she needed some water. Several days later, Josie was discovered by her neighbor. Josie was taken to the hospital. On May 1st, 1964, Josie was walking down her granddaughter's hallway in Salt Lake City. Her heart apparently just stopped beating, and Josie was dead. Josie was buried at the Bassett Cemetery at the Bassett Ranch, the last one to be buried there. Now there's a picture of Josie. She's actually standing in front of the old freight wagon. I'm not sure what the meaning of that freight wagon is to her. Maybe it could have been from the Bassett family. I'm not sure. But picture is actually taken at the John Jarvie Historical Ranch. And that freight wagon is actually still there, almost in the same spot where the picture was taken. Josie's funeral. There's a picture of Josie and her coffin there, and about to be buried at the Bassett Cemetery. Then a newspaper article from Craig and Courier, June 11th, 1964. The funeral for Josie was actually held in Jensen, in Utah, and then she was taken to the Bassett Cemetery to be buried. Minnie Krause Raps. Minnie was born June 6, 1882 to Mary and Charlie Krause. Minnie actually died November 18th, 1981 in Arizona. She almost lived to be 100 years old. She was the last pioneer of Browns Park. Now, Minnie homesteaded at a place now today's called Minnie's Gap. It's on the turnoff down to Browns Park. And she lived there for several years. Then she actually moved with her husband to Linwood, and they ran a store in Linwood until Linwood was flooded, and Minnie actually, as she left, burned her house down in Linwood. There's a poem written for Minnie Krause, and the poem is at the Minnie's Gap Cemetery. Minnie is actually not buried there. Her ashes were scattered in Browns Park. But the poem's written by Carolyn Jarvie Terry, a great-granddaughter of John Jarvie. Minnie, tell me a story. Tell me about the boarding house near the Bucket of Blood Saloon, or about Butch Cassidy and the Basses, carving legends in the hearts of Browns Park. Tell me about the tiny beaded moccasins, a gift for you from a starving squaw. Tell me about Tell me a story of your homestead at the Gap and the white-headed Scotsman who shared his books. Tell me of the day in Linwood when you arched your pride and dropped the match, leaving the home in ashes. Funnel for the win. Minnie, tell me a story now that you're home to stay. There's a picture of Minnie there, and also a picture of the plaque at Minnie's Gap that has the poem written on it. Esther Campbell. Esther Campbell was a school teacher at Ladore School in Browns Park. She also taught other places, but she did teach a couple years at Ladore Schoolhouse. Esther and her husband Dewar bought the John Jarvie Ranch in 1969 and started a museum there and give people a tour and tell them about John Jarvie and the history of Browns Park. I did meet Esther Campbell in 1975. I was a 14-year-old boy where our young man group was floating down the river. First night we actually stayed at Little Hole. That's no longer a campsite. Then next day we was going to stay at the across from the Jarvie Ranch at Bridge Hollow campsite. But on the way there, my brother at Red Creek stepped on a stick as they were walking up the side of the Red Creek, and it went through his foot. And when we got to Jarvie Ranch, Esther told him to take him to the hospital in Green River, which they did, and I actually went with them as Esther gave the group a tour of the ranch. We came back later that night. The next morning, she came and got us, the people that wanted to give the people that missed the tour, gave us a tour of the place, and I remember her telling us about the outlaw Thanksgiving dinner. But she showed us the hanging post where John Bennett was hung from, and she also showed us the graves. Remember the dugout was all caved in at the time, but she showed us the door to the dugout. Esther sold the ranch in 1979, and Esther ended up dying May 7th, 1995. There's Esther's obituary that was in the Vernon newspaper, and Esther and her husband on horses there. Then there's a picture of Esther. I'm not sure where that was taken at. Other women of Browns Park. There are a lot of other women in Browns Park that had remarkable stories and lives there, but I can't get them all here. But there's Nina Taylor. Shooting at a hunter that was trespassing on their land. The hunter actually went to the Taylor's place and asked Nina if he could hunt her on the land, and she actually told him no, she didn't want him hunting on the land. But later on, he snuck on the land and was hunting there. And Nina, seeing him hunting there, started shooting at his vehicle, hitting the headlights and that stuff. She pretty much hitting everything she's shooting at. And the hunter heard and got out of that place. Then Marie Allen, that's Nina's daughter, and there's a picture there of Marie Allen on the left. One time she was driving over the swinging bridge. Her kids were in the vehicle with her, and this is in a storm, and some of the boards on the swinging bridge had blown off, and she got about halfway before she had to stop because there's no more boards in front of her, so she had to go behind the car, get some more boards, and crawl over the car. She probably had to do this several times to get the boards in front of the car so she could finish driving over. And there's Sally Hughes, Sarah Tolliver, and many, many more wonderful women in Browns Park. Hope you enjoyed this presentation about the women of Browns Park. I do have a couple books, one Browns Park Haunted History, and many of these women's stories are in that book, along with other people that goes over a lot of the killings and stuff that happened in Browns Park. Then I have another book called John Jarvie. This is actually from his journal. It focuses on John Jarvie's life and his children's life after his death. If you'd like a copy of my book, you can email me at charliewardle34@gmail.com, or they're also available on Amazon. Thank you for listening to this presentation.